It started off like any other lazy Sunday afternoon. I was sitting in the den halfway through a lukewarm cup of coffee trying to pull up some old vacation photos for my niece. She's into photography now, and I remembered we had taken a bunch of scenic sh*ts on that New Hampshire trip a couple of years ago. The family laptop, our old beat-up Dell that survived 2 moves and at least one spilled smoothie, sat on the desk under a dusty lamp. No one really uses it anymore except to store photos and bills. I clicked through the folders: 2019 Summer, Carol's Office Party, Random, and then landed on one simply titled Photos, Miscellaneous. Classic Carol. She always dumped pictures into generic folders when she didn't feel like organizing. Usually, I'd roll my eyes and move on, but this time curiosity got the better of me. There, nestled between a picture of our old cat sunbathing on the windowsill and a blurry photo of a group brunch, was one I didn't recognize. At first, I thought maybe it was a stock photo. Something about it looked too posed. Carol was standing beside a sleek black car, definitely not ours. She had one arm draped around a tall, well-dressed man who I'd never seen before. The guy had on a fitted navy button-up, sleeves rolled to the elbows, a lazy grin on his face like he'd just told a joke only she could hear. And Carol, she looked relaxed. Radiant, even. She was wearing that off-the-shoulder summer dress she hadn't pulled out in ages, the one I used to compliment because it brought out her eyes. His hand was on her waist. Not just hovering there, either. Resting firmly. Familiar. In asterisk mate. I clicked on the file info, no label, just IMG_7612, timestamped from 2 months ago. No location tag. Nothing else. I stared at the screen for a long time. My first instinct was to tell myself it didn't mean anything. Maybe it was some professional acquaintance from her office. Maybe it was part of a themed party like she sometimes attended with her coworkers, those wine and costume nights they'd have every couple of months. But then again, Carol wasn't big on photos with people she didn't know well. And definitely not the kind that looked like it belonged in a vacation album. I saved the image to the desktop, closed the laptop, and sat back in my chair. My hands were sweating. My chest felt tight, like I was breathing through a straw. That evening, after dinner, I brought it up casually. "Hey," I said, trying to sound as normal as I could. "I was looking through the old vacation photos and I found something weird. Wanted to ask you about it." She looked up from her phone. "Weird how?" I opened the laptop, clicked the image, and turned it toward her. "Oh," she said after a brief pause. Then she gave a little laugh, too light, too quick. That was from Jen's birthday party. Remember I told you we were doing that goofy photo booth thing? I didn't remember that at all. He's not a friend or anything. Just some guy they hired. He was playing this over-the-top celebrity bodyguard role. It was a whole thing. You know how those parties get." She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear and reached for her wine. Like it was no big deal. I nodded slowly. "So he's an actor?" "Basically," she said. "I think he's like a friend of a friend who does party gigs." It was silly. Honestly, we were all a little tipsy. You know how those nights go. I didn't answer right away. She caught that. Her tone shifted. Defensive. "What?" she said, eyes narrowing slightly. "You're not seriously jealous, are you?" "I didn't say I was." "You didn't have to. Your face is doing all the talking." "Come on, Owen. It's just a stupid photo. You're being dramatic." There was a long pause between us. "I'm not mad," I said slowly, "but it's a little strange. That's all. I mean, he's touching you like he knows you." "Wow," she said, putting her glass down a little harder than necessary. "You're seriously reading into this?" "I'm asking a question, Carol. And I'm giving you an answer. God, you always do this. It's like, the second something doesn't make sense to you, it must mean I'm hiding something." That stung. Because maybe she was right, or maybe I was just now starting to see something I'd been too blind to notice. She went on, her voice rising just enough to make the air thick. "This is exactly why I don't share everything with you anymore. You turn it into a cross-examination. It was a harmless party pic. End of story." I wanted to argue. To dig in. But something about the way she said that, so polished, like she had the line memorized, made my stomach drop. I didn't press it. I just said okay. And that was that. But in the hours that followed, something changed in me. It was subtle at first. Just a quiet discomfort, like a splinter buried too deep to pull out. I sat in bed that night pretending to read, but the image was burned into the inside of my eyelids. Her body language. His hand. The ease between them. And the way she lied, if she lied so easily. So fluidly. It's not like our marriage was perfect. What marriage is. We'd had our rough patches, sure. Late-night arguments over dumb things that turned into week-long silences. Missed dinner plans. resentments that never quite faded. But I always thought we had a foundation, that even in our messiness, we were still choosing each other. But now, I wasn't so sure. In the days that followed, I found myself thinking back, replaying old moments with new perspective. That girls' trip she took in March, was it really just her and the girls? The random mood swings, the new lipstick she'd started wearing out of the blue. The way her phone always seemed to be on silent lately. The odd passwords. The small, quiet ways she had become a little less present over the past year. It was like that photo had opened a door I didn't know existed. And I wasn't sure I wanted to know what was on the other side. But something in me had already started walking through. I didn't accuse. I didn't pry. But I started watching. How long had she been able to look me in the eye and lie? That's the part that haunted me. Not the image itself, not even the man in the photo, but the ease with which she dismissed my concern. The flicker of irritation in her voice, like I was the one doing something wrong just by noticing. That night, as I lay beside her, her back turned to me, I stared at the ceiling and tried to pinpoint the moment things had started to unravel. Was it recent? Or had it been happening slowly, so gradually I mistook the decay for routine? I used to think you only got one or two defining moments in a marriage. Now I wasn't so sure. Maybe this was mine. The photo may have been one image in a folder of thousands. But it shifted something in me. Something I couldn't undo. After the photo incident, everything looked different. It's funny how something so small, a single image, can rewire your entire perception of someone. For days, I walked around our house like a ghost, revisiting conversations we'd had, arguments we'd brushed under the rug, moments I'd once chalked up to stress or just a mood. Now, every word Carol said felt like it had another version hiding underneath, a translation only I wasn't fluent in. She didn't bring up the photo again, and neither did I. But things didn't return to normal. Not really. That week, she went out 3 times. Drinks with coworkers, yoga with Mia, book club, all reasonable enough on the surface. But she started putting more effort into her outfits than I'd seen in years. New earrings, red lipstick, a dress I hadn't seen her wear in at least a decade. Something low-cut, backless. The kind of thing she used to wear when we were still trying to impress each other. On Wednesday night, I noticed her phone buzz while we were watching a movie. She grabbed it too fast, turned it face down. When she caught me looking, she smiled, tight-lipped, and asked, "You want more popcorn?" We didn't finish the movie. Thursday morning, she changed her phone passcode. I only noticed because she used to hand it to me sometimes to play music in the car or read off recipes. That day, I picked it up absent-mindedly to check the time, and the screen locked with a little shake. New code. I asked, careful to keep my voice casual. "Yeah," she said without looking up from her coffee. I got paranoid after reading about people stealing info off open phones. Right? There was a time when we shared everything, passwords, calendar events, little inside jokes via text. She used to screenshot *T-dumb memes and send them to me at work. Now, I couldn't even remember the last time she texted me during the day just to say hi. I'd check my phone out of habit and see nothing but silence from her side. Friday, she came home late, nearly midnight. Her hair was windblown, her heels in her hand, lipstick slightly smudged. She leaned against the doorframe and said, "Traffic was crazy." I was on the couch, pretending to be half asleep. I said. She kissed my forehead. Felt like she was kissing a stranger. And still, I didn't ask. I didn't confront her. Not because I was afraid of the answer, but because I wasn't sure I'd be able to handle how easily she might lie again. The next morning, I found myself scrolling through old photos. Ones of us. Laughing, cooking, bundled up in flannel by the fire pit in October. Her eyes had once looked at me like I was the only man in the room. Where did that version of her go? And more importantly, when did she leave? I remembered little things. Times she said she needed space. Weekends she spent with her sister that suddenly didn't make sense. Like that trip to Portland when she claimed she got food poisoning, but came back tanned and weirdly upbeat. Or the work conference in June, 3 days out of town and barely a single call. Just one "love you" text at the end of each day. I had thought she was just busy. Now I wasn't so sure. My mind spiraled in every direction, rewriting the last year like it was a movie script I had only half-watched the first time. Every new detail made the ending more obvious. Even her energy around me had changed. We didn't talk about anything real anymore. We used to have long conversations about politics, movies, dreams we weren't even sure we could afford. Lately, all I got were shallow updates. Mia's kid started preschool or works insane, followed by her disappearing into her phone or out the front door. It wasn't just the silence that stung. It was the way it all felt, automated. Like she was reading from a script and had already rehearsed every line. And then, one night, I saw it happen. We were having dinner, something I cooked because she said she was too tired. She was scrolling while I served pasta. I caught a glimpse of her screen over her shoulder. The name Brian flashed at the top of a text bubble. I hadn't heard her mention a Brian. The message preview was short, cut off mid-sentence, but I saw enough to freeze me mid-step. "Missed you, Toda." She clicked it away instantly, locking the screen and flipping it face down. "Everything okay?" I asked, steadying my voice. "Yeah. Just me being dramatic again." I nodded. She smiled. We both chewed our food like nothing was wrong. That night, I lay awake while she breathed softly beside me. I wasn't sure if I hated her for how easily she seemed to sleep or if I envied her for it. Maybe both. There was a time when I really believed, that Carol and I were rock solid. We weren't flashy or romantic all the time, but we knew each other. That's what I used to tell my friends when they joked about their wives being distant or nagging. I used to feel lucky. Now I wasn't sure if I was ever anything but background noise in her world. And that realization, it did something to me. I started keeping mental notes. Subtle ones. A new pair of shoes I hadn't seen before. A receipt for an expensive bottle of wine in her purse, one we hadn't drunk together. A voice message deleted seconds after it arrived. She was covering tracks I hadn't even asked about. If she was trying to make me paranoid, she'd succeeded. But I wasn't going to confront her yet. Not out of cowardice. Out of strategy. If she was hiding something, I needed to understand what. Who. How long. And maybe even why. Not because I wanted to save our marriage, I wasn't sure I did, but because I needed to stop feeling like I was losing my mind. One afternoon, I checked the shared credit card statement. Carol always handled the bills, but we both had access. I never had reason to look before. Now I had every reason. Nothing screamed affair outright. But there were patterns. Lunches in neighborhoods nowhere near her office. Boutique clothing stores she never mentioned. Rideshares from unfamiliar addresses, none of which matched Mia's house or her sister's. And then, tucked between two Amazon charges, was one that stood out, a hotel bar downtown. Not a chain. A niche, upscale place with tinted windows and a rooftop view. It was charged on a Tuesday. She told me she worked late that night. I didn't ask about it. I didn't say a word. But that evening, when she was getting ready for another girls' dinner, I watched her swipe on that same red lipstick and spritz the expensive perfume she never wore around me anymore. "You look nice," I said. She blinked like she wasn't expecting me to speak. "Thanks," she replied, smoothing down her blouse. "We're trying this new place Mia read about. Supposed to be good." I nodded, letting her go. An hour later, I checked her location. We still had each other added on Find My Phone, an old habit from back when we cared about each other getting home safe. Hers had recently gone from available to location not shared. Of course. That was the night I started to think about what life might look like without her. Not in an angry, dramatic way. Just practically. I imagined mornings waking up alone, but without the constant ache of wondering where she was. I imagined dinners that were quiet but honest. Nights where I didn't stare at the ceiling questioning whether my wife was thinking about another man in the next room. It was the first time in a long while that I felt a flicker of control. Not revenge. Not bitterness. Just clarity. I didn't have proof, not yet. But I had enough pieces of the puzzle to know what the full picture would show. And deep down, I already knew her explanation when the time came. It wasn't serious. It was just a mistake. You were distant. But the truth was simpler than all of that. She had changed. And I was finally ready to see it. The thing about instincts is they don't yell. They whisper. Quiet, patient, like a slow drip through the cracks in your ceiling. You don't notice it at first. Then one day, the paint's bubbling and the drywall's sagging, and you realize it's been leaking for a long time. That Saturday morning, Carol left the house in high spirits. I watched from the kitchen window as she tossed her bag into the back seat of her car. Hair curled, heels clicking, her favorite sunglasses perched on her head. Heading to New Haven, she called out Bachelorette weekend for Sarah. "We're doing a winery tour and staying over." I nodded, sipping my coffee. "Have fun." She smiled. A picture-perfect one. The kind you could frame. The second her car turned the corner, I put down my mug and grabbed my keys. I wasn't even sure what I was doing at first. I told myself I needed air. A drive. Maybe pick up supplies for the garage. But deep down I was following something else entirely. A hunch. One that had been clawing at the back of my mind for weeks. I headed north. Past the downtown shops, the new apartment complex they built on Route 1, the train station. I wasn't tailing her, I had no clue where she was going. But something told me not to go far. That's when I saw her car. Parked at a gas station right outside town. Not running. Not refueling. Just parked. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Same make and model, sure. But then I saw the bumper sticker, her little Rhode Island crab decal, faded but still there. My stomach dropped. I pulled in 2 spaces down. The windows were fogged slightly, just enough to distort shapes. But through the haze, I made out 2 silhouettes. One in the driver's seat. The other in the passenger side. Then, like some cruel twist of fate, the man leaned toward her. His profile became clear for half a second. Sharp jawline. That navy blue jacket. Sunglasses on the dash. The same guy from the photo. The same hand now reaching up to tuck her hair behind her ear. My heart didn't shatter. It didn't explode. It didn't even race. It just slowed. Like the moment you realize the fire's already burned through the house. There's nothing left to save. Just smoke and what you'll walk away from. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't take pictures. I didn't knock on the window and demand an explanation. I drove home. The house was too clean. Too still. It always had been lately. But now it felt like a museum, something preserved, staged. Her plants lined the windowsills, her favorite mug sat on the drying rack. A framed photo of us in Bar Harbor still hung over the fireplace. I stared at it for a long time. By the time she got back Sunday evening, I had already packed my bag. She walked through the door looking tired and rumpled, her ponytail loose, mascara smudged beneath her eyes. She smelled like lavender shampoo and cheap wine. "Hey," she said. "You're back early." I didn't answer. Just gestured to the table. Her eyes landed on the folder I'd placed there. Thick. Cream-colored. Legal. She blinked. "What's this?" "Paperwork," I said simply. "Transfer of property. Bank statements. A draft agreement." "What agreement?" I let the silence stretch. "The one you signed 2 weeks ago," I said, "when I asked you to look over the refinancing documents." Her face went pale. "I told you they were for the home equity line," I added. "You never even read them." She opened the folder. Flipped through the pages. Her breath caught. Wait, you tricked me?" "No," I said calmly. "I gave you what you were asking for. You wanted space. You wanted freedom. This is it." She stared at me like she didn't recognize the person in front of her. Maybe she didn't. "This isn't fair," she said, voice shaking. "You can't just take everything." "I'm not taking anything," I said. "You left it. You've been leaving for months. I just formalized it." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her eyes darted to the windows as if the right words were out there somewhere, floating in the streetlights. And for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to rescue her. Or us. Or anything we used to be. I turned, grabbed my duffel bag, and headed toward the door. "Where are you going?" she asked, almost breathless. "Does it matter?" She didn't follow. Just stood there in the hallway, folder pressed to her chest like it might anchor her to something real. I didn't slam the door behind me. I didn't look back. I just walked to my truck, tossed my bag in the passenger seat, and drove. I didn't know where I was headed. Not exactly. But I knew where I wasn't going. And that was enough. I ended up at a small roadside inn by the coast. The kind with paper-thin walls and a vending machine that still took coins. The sheets were scratchy and the faucet dripped, but it felt like peace. I sat on the bed and stared at the ceiling fan spinning lazily overhead. I wasn't angry. I wasn't crying. I wasn't anything. I was empty. And in that emptiness, I felt something close to clarity. Carol had made her choice. I had simply refused to keep pretending otherwise. It's strange how quickly a person can go from being your whole world to a stranger you used to know. I thought I'd mourn more. I thought I'd break apart. But instead, I slept deeper that night than I had in months. The next morning, I went down to the front desk and asked the woman if they had monthly rates. She said no, but offered me a discount if I stayed for more than 2 weeks. That felt like a sign. I called my lawyer. Told him to proceed. I called my buddy Vince, old friend, former mechanic, now a real estate broker. Asked him to start prepping the garage for something new. I called no one else. Carol texted me once that week. "We need to talk." I didn't answer. A few days later, "I don't understand. After everything, you just walk away?" Still nothing. Then silence. She didn't fight. Maybe she didn't have the strength. Or maybe she knew deep down that she'd lost the right to be part of my story. There was one more message though. 2 weeks after the break. Just one line. You'll regret this. But I didn't. In fact, the only thing I regretted was waiting so long to trust myself. To listen to the voice inside that had been whispering the truth all along. She had been slipping away piece by piece. And I had let her. But not anymore. Not now. The day I stepped back into the garage, it didn't feel like mine anymore. Dust hung in the air, lit by streaks of afternoon light pouring through the high windows. My old bench sat untouched, a half-finished 68 Norton still perched on the lift. A coffee mug I'd forgotten months ago rested on the counter, stained with the remnants of a life that used to feel steady. But now everything had a different weight. Carol was gone. Not just from the house. From this space. From this version of me. There was a void, sure, but it didn't ache the way I expected. It felt like space that had been cleared. Like a field after a burn, scorched but ready. I didn't want to waste that space. So I started sweeping. Not just the floor, but everything. Cleaned out shelves, boxed up old paperwork, tore down the calendar we'd stopped updating after May. I replaced rusted tools, patched drywall, installed new lighting. I didn't even have a plan yet. Just motion. Just the need to move forward. For years, this garage had been where I went to disappear. Fix engines, tune carburetors, tinker with custom builds that never left the shop. But now I wanted something else. Something that didn't feel like hiding. Something that meant passing something on, not just holding it all inside. That night, I sat with a beer in my hand and an old notebook on my knee, sketching out an idea I hadn't let myself imagine before, a teaching space. A place where I could show other people the craft I'd buried myself in. ASK*LLS Academy, not just for mechanics, but for people who needed something to build with their hands. The way I once did. I wasn't trying to change the world. Just create one corner of it where broken things could be repaired. Where people could learn that not all damage was permanent. I called my old friend Alex, a web developer who once owed me a favor for fixing up his vintage BMW. Think you could help me build a site? I asked. He showed up 2 days later with a laptop and 3 different mock-ups. We called it Legacy Garage. I didn't expect much. Maybe a few hobbyists. A retired guy looking for something to do with his weekends. But when the site went live, applications rolled in faster than I expected. Some were local, young guys with beat-up dirt bikes or antique mopeds. Some came from farther out, people who'd never touched a wrench but needed something to anchor them again. It felt like the garage was breathing for the first time in years. And then came the email I wasn't expecting. Subject line, interested in the Saturday class. Sender, Lena Maddox. I didn't recognize the name at first. It wasn't until I opened the message and read the line, I'm Brian's daughter. I know who you are and I hope that's not a deal breaker, that it clicked. Brian, the man from the photo. The one Carol chose. Or maybe the one who chose her. Hard to say. Lena. His daughter. 21, maybe 22. I remembered Carol mentioning her once in passing. College student, design major. Didn't live at home. I sat with the message for a while. My first instinct was to ignore it. Not because of her, but because of what it could mean. What it could drag back in. I'd worked hard to carve a clean line between then and now. Did I really want someone walking back and carrying the last name of the man who'd helped destroy my marriage? But her message was different. Not dramatic. Not nosy. Just honest. I'm not here because of them. I'm here because I want to learn. That was all she said. I wrote back one sentence. You show up, you get your hands dirty. That's the deal. Saturday morning, she did just that. She was early. Hair tied back, no makeup, jeans and an old hoodie. Carried a notebook, not a phone. She didn't flinch at the grease or the cold tools. Just watched, listened, and asked real questions about torque, gasket seals, valve timing. I kept my answers short at first. Guarded. But she didn't press. Didn't mention Carol. Didn't mention Brian. Just kept showing up. Week after week. It was strange, at first, how quickly she picked things up. Like she had a mind built for moving parts. Not just technical, but thoughtful. She noticed things others didn't, the pitch of a starter motor, the drag on a wheel bearing, the way someone's hands shook when holding a wrench for the first time. And she wasn't the only one. Others joined as the weeks went by. A retired architect named Frank who wanted to restore his grandfather's bike. A teenage kid named Eli who reminded me of myself, awkward, quiet, and completely mesmerized by engines. A software engineer named Marcus who was sick of staring at screens and needed something real. There was something about the way they all showed up, eager, humbled, sometimes unsure but never uninterested, that made me realize something. This was bigger than me. Bigger than Carol. Bigger than the past. This was a place where people rebuilt more than machines. Of course, word got back to her. Carol. I don't know what she expected when she found out. A thank you? A plea? But instead of reaching out to me, she did what she always did when she couldn't control something. She tried to twist the story. Online posts started popping up in local groups. Vague accusations. Beware of legacy garage, ask around before you enroll. Some people use teaching as a mask for manipulation. Nothing direct. Nothing provable. Just whispers. But here's the thing about whispers, they fade fast when no one listens. For every vague post, we had 10 students tagging us with pictures of what they built. Videos of their bikes starting up for the first time. Testimonials about what it meant to learn something real with their own hands. No one cared about Carol's noise. Not even Lena. She read one of the posts and rolled her eyes. She really thinks everything's still about her, she said, grease smudged across her cheek. That was the only time we talked about Carol directly. And that's when it clicked. Lena wasn't here to stir the pot. She was here to break away from it. From them. She was carving her own path through the wreckage of all our pasts. And maybe in a way, so was I. So when she asked if she could help assist with the beginner class on Saturdays, I said yes without hesitation. She'd earned it. Not because of who she was related to, but in spite of it. Lena showed up every Saturday like clockwork. What started as curiosity turned into something steady, commitment. She learned fast, faster than I expected. Her questions weren't just technical, they were sharp, layered. She wanted to understand why things worked, not just how. The garage started filling up, Frank with his knucklehead Harley, Eli stripping a dirt bike, Marcus rebuilding an old Honda from scratch. The place buzzed with life. I didn't talk about Carol and no one asked. But when she started posting online that I was nizing her family, people saw through it. They'd met me. They'd built something here. The academy wasn't about revenge. It was about purpose. I wasn't looking back anymore. Neither was anyone else. Carol showed up one afternoon, unannounced. She walked in like she owned the place, eyes scanning the shop, lips pursed. Lena was at a workbench assembling a gearbox. Carol barely looked at her. This whole thing, she said, it's just a way to get back at me. I didn't say a word. Didn't give her the reaction she wanted. Later, Brian called. Said he was tired of the drama. Offered to buy out Carol's legal ties to the shop himself, clean, quiet, final. I agreed. The papers were signed within a week. No arguments. No goodbyes. When Carol left the property for the last time, Lena didn't even look up from her work. By fall, the garage had evolved. We had 3 workspaces, a small dorm above the office, and a testing track out back. Lena stayed late sometimes, mentoring new students, planning curriculum. At our first open house, she handed me a plaque she'd carved by hand, Legacy Garage. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded because words didn't feel big enough. That day, I stopped seeing her as someone connected to a mistake. She was part of the future I was building. The pain was behind me. The lessons remained. And for once, I wasn't just fixing broken things. I was building something that could last.